Very good morning, student. Hi, all of you. Welcome. Standard 11 Arts, both GSCB, Subject Social Science, presentation by Mrs. Shikul Sidani. In this lecture, number 5, I will discuss the notes of lesson number 1, Psychology is Science. Explain the questions in details. First question, define psychology and explain it. Psychology is the science of human and animal behavior by C.T. Morgan. B means the science is a special type of knowledge or a knowledge that has been obtained by the making use of spatial methodology for study, thus that it is considered as a science. Repetition, changes, and control the objectives are characteristics of science. Human and animal behavior is being studied in laboratory setting or natural environment. Psychology makes the use of scientific method of gain knowledge. Thus, that's why psychology is known as a science while studying the human behavior as well as the animal behavior. What means the nature of psychology? Explain the nature of psychology. In order to understand the person, it is equally understand their temperament and the if we able to understand the temperament the same way have the better understanding of the subject means which type of thoughts the people is having. It is necessary to understand its nature. That means the nature includes the subject methods and methodology that is key for proper understanding of subject is called nature of psychology. Nature of psychology can be understood by the following characteristics. Psychology is a science, psychology is a natural science, psychology is a social science, and psychology is a behavior science. As far the nature is concerned, every people has their own way of thoughts. And in the same way, how the people start reacting in the form of the subject matter and their form in the way they understood the subject, that the subject of the people is called the nature of psychology. And it has the variable understood the characteristics, which is given 4 characteristics had been derived. Psychology is a science, psychology is a natural science, psychology is a social science, and psychology is a behavior science. Explain the origin development of modern psychology. If the word modern psychology, what comes in your mind to understand the human mind and behavior is an old as birth and origin of human being. There were the many wise men like Bharat Muni, Patanjali, Chanakya, etc., who have given the try to understand the human behavior in the previous time. They had described the way the human behavior in their own thoughts. And there were the many philosophers like from Greece, Roman like Plato and Aristotle have made a similar method related to the philosophical world and studied the human behavior. In the year 16th century AD onwards, the philosophers like discussing the issue related to find the nature of universe and also about the mind and intelligence. They have been evaluating that is the difference between about the mind and intelligence and started evaluating. After that, Wound described done the experimental study. During the experimental process, he asked them to describe the detailed experience and mental process. So, psychology is the mental process that one wants to express. After one's lip sync and the William James, without the some chance, established the laboratory in the Cambridge, Massachusetts to understand human behavior. James is known as the functionalism of the functionalist approach. In this approach, the Vladimir Kafka made a major contribution by laying the more emphasis on experience of perpetual organizations rather than the structure of mind. So that are the era from the beginning and till the 21st century will go through the process how the modern psychology has been developed step by step. For example, if we watch the film, what comes in the front of our eyes? The still pictures, which quickly passes through a series of changes and therefore our perpetual experience is far more than the actualities. According to Watson, mind is unable to see and its introspect is something very personal, so cannot verify. So Watson wanted to say that if what is going in the mind we can't see. So he is against to the theory which was done in the previous. She also gave the recognition that psychology is a science of behavior or an objective study of a response, which given a stimuli which is measured. In the same with the segment from extreme ideology, with the related to the human nature, shook the world, and he make the peoples have the power. The same with the humanist like Carl Roger, Abraham Maslow, and emphasis on the strength of human need and their independence, development of internal temperament and the natural instinct to move ahead. Thus, in the history development of modern psychology, many assumptions were derived. In the later half of the 20th century, the cognitive approach developed its broad light how we look the world this way. Cognitive is a process to know which incorporate thinking is understood, observing, remembering, and the problem solving. Many cognitive psychologists can consider the human brain as a computer system which processes the information in the same way the opinion of mind is like a computer and accept the information in the process and make the modification and stores it. So when it is necessary to retrieve the same, which is practices in the form of the cognitive psychology in the way of the computer is a mind and the process of the mind started thinking that the information had been received and the process goes in the mind in the form of CPU, how the CPU works. In the same way, the mind works in our body to store information. Discuss in detail the cognitive approach and the social cultural approach. So, cognitive approach is developed as opposed to the behavioral approach, which shows the human behaviors being the mechanical in the nature. It has opposed to the simplistic explanation that the behavioral approach has given while studying the human behavior. But also because the human being is not such a machine that it would give a direct response to stimulus, not perform merely listening to the command. So, as per the behavior, man is like a telephone instrument who two ends in which are the stimulus are responded are seen, in which the process two is not seen. As per the cognitive approach, man is like a computer machine where there is input and stimuli information has been gone and this interpretations of information that the process is going on and on in the process in the mind that leads to an output, and this output of the put is known as process. And how we can obtain this output with the help of knowledge is compared with the previous information and behaves after the taking decisions. It had been found different change in the person. Thus, man's dependent thinking process becomes stimuli and respond. At last, tries to understand the human behavior by trying to understand and complex variable like thinking, memories, problem solving, decisions making process is called the cognitive approach. Social cultural approach. This approach in the approach laid the emphasis on environment and unconsciousness need, which were the responsible for the human behavior. So there is important variable like society and the culture were neglected. Nobody paid attention to this factor. This approach considered the social and the cultural variable importance for molding the human behavior. Thus, this approach hold the environment responsible for the man good or bad behavior, in which how the society react and how they get from the society, and this with the reaction comes in the form of public in the form of behavior. State the various fields of psychology and discuss any two fields in teacher. There are 5 development fields of psychology: cognitive psychology, health psychology, sports psychology, environmental psychology, forensic psychology. The two fields of psychology explained below. Cognitive psychology studied the mental and the cognitive process of human beings and sensation, perception, attention, logic, thoughts, creative decision making, and problem solving. It also lays the emphasis on how the interprets his environment rather than the environment influencing. So, cognitive approach has been the logic, the analysis, and its thoughts to create in the mind, and the people started thinking and take a decision power. The same with sports psychology, where create peoples in the form of the victory thoughts, and it goes on and on. And the same with the people started to take an equal importance with the form of the mental in the psychology. They become very fit and healthy. So the aim of sports psychology is make the players mentally focused and prepared and achieve to the goal, and that creates the effect of the hard working, and the mind has been developed to do an action with the form of groupism, and they can only get a victory by playing together. Now we are coming to the short notes. Psychology is a natural science. It is necessary to understand a person, for that it is also important to understand his or her temperament. For better understanding of the subject, it is better understand its nature. How we can understand the temperament, and in the same way we can capture the nature. It means nature includes the subject matter, methodology, its studying, human understanding, and its proper subject matter in this process of study is called the psychology of science. So how we understand the human nature in the form of temperament, in the form of the personal issues, which is known as the subject matter. If you understand the way what they think and what are the problems, and you help them to overcome, and that you analyze and you understand the feeling of the person, is called the natural science. So the natural of psychology and being understood these following characteristics: psychology is a science, psychology is a natural science, psychology is a social science, psychology is a behavioral science. Aim of psychology: there are four aims of psychology: description, clarification, prediction, control. So, description of human behavior, the subject matters of the psychology in which we come to know the behavior pattern of that person, of internal as well as external, we can come to know, and we can describe the type of the change of the result of mind, and the aim had been described with the form of we can describe by the own behavior. So any subject will try to describe its subject matter so that it will able to make the progress in the aim of psychology to understand how the human behavior is understood. In this second aim, psychology is describing the clarifying the subject matter. Under this specification, one tries to develop into the causative factors behind the certain occurrence or phenomena. Means any kind of clarification which been described in the form of factor, and you have been clarified with the help of the way how you behave, and you come for the sum of the judgment. For example, if person gets scared in the certain type of situation, then the psychology will clarify why the person is having the fear, the reason asked, and then after come for the conclusion. Understand? So prediction, next point, third point, the aim of third point is prediction. Prediction means the taking help of establishing law in any field and apply it to your power of imagination. For example, meteorology does not stop describing, in the same way the clarifying, in the same way the prediction, it goes on and on. If you predict means it may rain today, it will be rain heavily. That the example you go for the prediction in the form of theory, and you predict if they understood the childhood environment, and they can understood the person very good. So if we want to understand any person, it is very much important to understand the childhood. So it is also related to many theories like learning, motivation, emotions, that creates the bonding between the persons in the form of human behavior and helps to create a good relation. So prediction creates the way how you come to know, how you interlink from the past thing which had been happened in the human life. Control means an effort based establish the law which helps the individual to solve the successful his difficulties, tension, maladjustment, effects. In other efforts are made to overcome situations which are harmful or that which can be troublesome. So, in many times, the people have their own problems in their life. It is very much important to tackle them and to understand, and this is known as maladjustment or to control it in the form of way how you overcome from the problems. Behavior approach, Watson was highly impressed by the prosperity of individual in the form of industrial revolution. The same with the mechanization means manovikruti means the people had started develop their own way of life in the year of 20th century. He saw the psychology merely a science of behavior, and thereafter it gave the behavioral approach. According to the Watson, man should be understood by his behavior, and that's to which had been observed and objective matters. He felt that such a method should be kept which are related to the consciousness, subject experience, and introspection. And this Watson has been behavioral practices had been doing approach and recognize the fact that behavior was not an account, but it is the response given to the stimuli. So it is the two-way approach is known as the stimuli and response approach. This approach is studied over the behavior of the person. That is which can be directly seen, like the speech, facial expression, gesture, bodily movement. Thereafter known as the behavioral approach. Other than the Watson, B.F. Skinner and E. Dutray and E.C. Tallman, etc., have been contributed to this approach. So, behavior approach has many things. It's the stimuli and the interlinking. The way the people have been respond according to the behavior, and the behavior comes in the form of the approach that goes two ways in the form of the human behavior. Psychodynamic approach is an approach lays emphasis on unconscious aspect of human mind. It tries to understand the human behavior, which refers to the dynamic variable like motives, emotions. According to psychoanalyst means Sigmund Freud, who had been analyzed like type of behavior are based on unconscious process. Means people's behavior in which it is based on unconsciousness. When they are abnormal, they are not normal. If we want to study the people's behavior, it is also important to study the unconscious state of mind of the particular person. This approach considered that for the entire personality, hereditary, the childhood experience are considered very significant. Individual unconscious mind is responsible for his behavior and lays emphasis on these types of study. In the same way, the psychodynamic approach tries to study the human behavior based on three parts of personality, that is, ID, ego, superego. And it is tries to study the conscious, subconscious, unconscious state of mind as well as the psychosexual development that take place. So the approach has developed many type of tremendous process in the individual abnormal mind in which peoples are not feeling like normal people and they react which is doing the kind of activity which is abnormal, and this state is to be not aware about any other, but it can be aware with the help of psychodynamic approach while studying and evaluating and emphasizing and experimenting, hypnotizing, and many other things can be done in the form of experiment. Biological approach is the psychologists have made a major contribution in the development of psychology. Weber, Fashional, and the Helmholtz took pains to study of the methods they believed to understand the human behavior. Biological approach takes helps of chromosome, genes, glandules, hormones, nerves, impulse, and physiology. sensor organs, muscular, etc. to understand the basis of human behavior. Means if you want to study any person, it is also equally study the physical aptitudes. The same with a different method of study to research the use of histological electrical stimulation, the hormonal method in which the beginning was the most acceptable approach because based on the different parts of the body and biological be- basis of behavior was understood clearly. How hereditary genes and brains are associated with the behavior was also clarified. Advanced movement, speech, etc. could also be explained. But this approach failed to explain in the internal experiment. Why? Experiences. Why? Because it can be the type of behavior. Thus, this approach complete the understanding of body, not about the brain. So it can describe the what is happening in the body, but not is happening in the brain. So the logically it is not proving what is the action, the thoughts had been arise and not any kind of action. The experimental work can be executed with the help with what is happening in the brain. So logically the human body is difficult to understand the behavior and the mental mechanism. So biological study and approach helps to study the human behavior in the base of the human activity, social culture, environment, and the way the body movement in the body physically, and and not for the mentally we can study about the mind. So this is the bodily process. In these limitations of biological approach we have been gone through thoroughly. I hope my student have been better understood. Thank you, my dear students. I hope you have been understood very well. It is not easy every chapters, but it is very important to understood each and every points. In next my PPT, I will share the objective and short question, but it is very much important go thoroughly the all of the points. I hope you have been understood very well. Okay, thank you. Have a nice day.